What's up everyone, and welcome back to HateWatchers. Today we're doing a brief review on the second season of The White Lotus, a dark comedy on HBO. Let's get right into the recap. Spoilers ahead. Season 2 moves from Maui to Sicily as we see another set of crazy events at a different White Lotus hotel. We follow the staff and their lineup of colorful guests for the week. We only have 2 returning cast members from the first season in Jennifer Coolidge, who plays Tanya, the troubled, wealthy heiress, and her husband Greg, played by John Grease. Everyone else is new. As with the first season, we open up by learning that one of the people at the White Lotus died as Daphne discovers a corpse in the water. We then jump back in time a week to learn more about what led to this death. Starting off with this group of 4 friends, we have 2 couples on vacation. Cameron and Daphne are your stereotypical young, wealthy couple who have traveled the world to know all the best spots. They're joined by Ethan and Harper, a couple who's been married for some time and only recently came into some money. They see Cameron and Daphne as vapid, oblivious jerks. Cameron and Ethan were roommates in college, and Cameron has a history of one-upping Ethan. Next, we have 3 generations of this family with a grandfather, father, son vacation. The grandfather is an unrepentant horn dog. The father is a cheating sex addict whose relationship with his wife and daughter is at the breaking point. And the son is a nice guy, but is eventually shown to be too much of a bleeding heart pussy. Lastly, we have Tanya from season 1 and her assistant Portia. Tanya is a flighty, wealthy, troubled heiress, like most every character Jennifer Coolidge plays. Portia was brought along on this trip to work, and Tanya's husband Greg isn't happy about it. They're greeted by the staff headed by the manager Valentina, and all the while 2 locals, one of them a hooker, are watching the guests arrive as the prostitute has been hired for the week by one of the arriving guests. All of the guests get settled in, and we learn about these statues scattered around that represent a tale of infidelity, and the main theme of this season is introduced. The father, Dominic, is trying to mend his marriage after his constant affairs tore it apart. Cameron is unfaithful to his wife, who has affairs of her own as a result, and Tanya grows increasingly suspicious that her husband Greg is having an affair. We find out that Dominic is the guest who hired the prostitute Lucia for the week. His son Albie strikes up some sparks with Portia, but she's hesitant to go further because she feels that he's too soft and nice. After Greg leaves under the guise of having to return home for work, Tanya is left alone with Portia and meets a group of gay gentlemen who think she's just fabulous and want to take her to Palermo, where they have a villa. Portia is soon hooking up with the main guy's nephew, and Albie is quickly forgotten. When the girls, Daphne and Harper, go away for a day, Cameron and Ethan decide to get into some trouble and are soon drunk and drugged, partying with Lucia and her friend. Cameron ends up sleeping with them, and a condom wrapper is left on the couch in Ethan's room. When she returns, Harper finds the condom and suspects that Ethan cheated on her. She eventually confronts Ethan about it, but she doesn't believe him because he initially hid the whole series of events from her, and their relationship becomes strained. Albie becomes acquainted with the hooker Lucia after his dad ended their arrangement for the week, but Albie's unaware that she's a professional. He finds out that she's a professional in the morning when she asks for her payment, but seemingly drops it when she realizes he didn't know her line of work. Albie and Lucia strike up a romance that lasts for the rest of his trip. Tanya and the gallivanting gays arrive in Palermo with love-struck Portia in tow. Tanya is treated as the toast of Palermo as they take her to the opera and treat her like royalty. Late at night, she discovers the main guy getting plowed by his nephew and warns Portia that something feels off, without giving her details about what she saw. The main guy tells Tanya about a cowboy he met and fell madly in love with in his youth when he was traveling in the United States. Later, when Portia is whisked away by the nephew for a night on the town, Tanya attends a coke-fueled party at the villa where she discovers an old photo of the owner of the villa and someone who looks just like her husband Greg. Throughout all of this, we get pieces of information implying that the owner of the villa is actually broke and is barely hanging on to the estate. After the nephew gets pissed drunk, he divulges some dark secrets to Portia without giving much in the way of specifics. Back at the White Lotus, Ethan and Harper's relationship has continued its downward spiral, and he starts to suspect Harper cheated on him with Cameron, and Harper eventually admits that they kissed. Ethan confronts Cameron and they brawl in the ocean. Afterward, Ethan brings this information to Daphne, and the 2 go off alone where they presumably bang. During Albie and Lucia's fling, she's harassed several times by her pimp, and Albie grows concerned about her safety in this profession. He asks his dad for 50,000 euros to get Lucia out of it, offering to put a good word in with his mother, Dominic's wife, if he makes the payment. His dad eventually agrees and transfers the money. In Palermo, Tanya learns from Portia that the owner of the villa is in near financial ruin, and Tanya realizes that the prenup she has with Greg is nullified if she dies. We now presume that Greg's suspicious phone calls were with the villa owner to orchestrate her death. Now in fear for her life, she sets sail with the men back to the White Lotus, and Portia discovers that the nephew's job was to get her out of the picture so they could have Tanya killed. After they drop anchor offshore, Tanya, now aware of the plan, starts to see the assassination unfolding when she takes the hitman's gun and barricades herself in a room. Once the door is broken down, she commits a slew of hate crimes, killing all but 2 of the gay guys on the boat. Stranded and with 2 of the men escaping to seek help, she hatches a desperate plan to escape on their smaller boat. Just as she's summoning the courage to make the 20-foot jump down onto it, she slips and hits her head, falling into the water and drowning. Ethan and Harper are getting along again after the 2 have both strayed from their marriage, making them both pieces of shit, but now equal pieces of shit. Albie runs into Portia at the airport, where we learn that Albie got hosed and the hooker played him all week long, and Portia learns from him that Tanya was the one who died. The 2 exchange phone numbers and the season comes to an end. Now, there are plenty of other characters and storylines that are well fleshed out and somewhat interesting, but they're secondary to everything we went over. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this second season of The White Lotus is a great watch or a hate watch. This season is certainly a great watch, although it lacks the magic of season 1. Now, this season was great for what it was. It was a very interesting story with a complex, troubled cast of characters that grabs your attention the whole way through. The acting, the dialogue, the cinematography is all great. It has an artistic feel to it that's not too in your face or up its own ass. The ambient shots that grow more and more turbulent as the characters' stories turn turbulent themselves were perfect, just as in season 1. But our main gripe with this season is it seemingly forgot the comedy aspect of a dark comedy. Season 1 had us laughing and giggling pretty much the whole way through as we watched realistic, awkward social interactions spiral out of control and eventually lead to some pretty dire actions and someone's death. While the overall theme and spirit of a dark comedy is intact in season 2, it didn't have much comedy sprinkled in to take the edge off. It also lacked much interconnectedness between the guests whose story we followed, something that was very well handled in the first season. Also, the staff's stories were mostly self-contained and they didn't intersect with those of the guests like they did in season 1. As mentioned earlier, the main theme is infidelity. It's brought up in the first episode and symbolized by these statues that are seemingly everywhere. Cameron, Daphne, Ethan, Harper, Tanya, Greg, Dominic, and even Albie and Portia to some degree all dabble in their own infidelities. It's a theme that slowly builds until seemingly no one is left faithful by the end. The White Lotus still does all of the little things incredibly well. The intro and music are still haunting and hypnotic, and it's a really unique inclusion that sets the tone for the rest of the show. The overall production quality was tremendous, just like with season 1, and we would fully expect a 3rd season in some new extravagant location. Now we just have to figure out which character from season 2 will be the carryover into season 3. Taking a shot in the dark, we'd say either Albie or his father Dominic. And we'd love to see Michael Imperioli with another season of the show where he can be a larger focus. We weren't turned on to this show until halfway through this 2nd season, and we would have loved to have been around to review season 1, as you've probably gathered by now. But The White Lotus is officially on our radar, and we'll be here for a season 3 if and when it comes. And we absolutely recommend you give the show a chance yourself. Watch the first 3 episodes of season 1 and we think you'll be hooked. A big thank you to everyone who made it to this point in the video. Let us know in the comments, had you heard of The White Lotus before this video? If so, what was your take on the 2nd season? Please hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this season review, and hit the subscribe button below to stay tuned to the channel for videos on season 3 of The White Lotus, as well as for comedy breakdowns and reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you again, and we'll catch you on the next one.